happy Friday, happy Martin Luther King weekend, and thank you all for joining us to celebrate the launch of our Impact Measures tool. So first, just want to introduce myself. I'm Tyson Barker, Director of the EC PRISM team here at the University of Oregon. And feel free to tweet Know Your Impact, join our Facebook group, our Twitter handle, and our LinkedIn profile throughout the event. And if you want closed captioning or live captions, should be a closed captioning button on the Zoom screen on the bottom right. So to get started, feel free to put your name and where you're coming from into the chat. We'd love to hear about where everybody's coming from today. And I'll first just kind of review who we have in the field today. So we primarily have many of you from university research groups. Greetings from DC, awesome, welcome. Community nonprofits and national nonprofits. We're glad to see a number of you who are from federal, state, city employees who work in the government, philanthropic funders, program officers. We also have some social entrepreneurs. Last but not least, we're able to get some pediatricians and those in healthcare here as well. So we've had about over 200 registrants for today, and we're hoping to see the majority of you today. So in terms of topics of interest, when you registered, we also asked for you to just tell us what you're interested in terms of measurement and why you wanted to be here at the event. And there are a few things that kind of stand out in this word cloud. So one is there's a theme on tools, knowledge, and learning. And that is something that's been critical for this project from the beginning, is increasing knowledge and learning and providing accessible tools, research-based tools to the community. Obviously, you also see a lot of words related to early childhood and young children. And that, again, is important to us. And one of the main themes of our work is to promote the development of infants and young children and their families. And we're hoping the launch of this tool can be a one stepping stone into improving measurement with the ultimate goal of improving the health and well-being of children and their families. So quickly, just want to review what our event schedule today. So we'll be starting at about 10:10 today for our first presentation. And in the morning, what will be our first hour or so from 10 to 10:50, we're going to be doing a web walkthrough and reveal. We'll have an introduction from Dr. Phil Fisher on a little bit of the background, web demonstration, and I'll be talking a little bit more about how we came up with the scoring process. We'll also have an opportunity for a question and answer session, so you can have opportunities to ask questions to us. We will then be doing a short break, and then we'll be doing a in-depth topics breakout. So we have a few different rooms, and in the invite, a number of you indicated which breakout you want to be part of. And for those of you who aren't assigned to a breakout, you have the opportunity to select a breakout, and we'll put a link in the chat. We'll also, following, do a little bit of share out on what you've learned from those breakout sessions. And then we'll have a quick break. Following, we'll do the second round of the breakout rooms and continue to go more in depth in learning about the tool, the scoring process, and some of our educational tools as well. And we'll be closing with some more general information on our technical assistance and consulting, as well as doing a giveaway and sharing the impact URL. So thank you all for kind of placing all the where you're coming from and your name. It's just really great to see, one, a lot of familiar faces in the group today, but also two, a lot of you who we don't know and we haven't met, and we're looking forward to getting to know you and for you to learn more about our work. So thank you again for joining us. Great. So we'll go ahead and move into our first presentation for today. So Dr. Phil Fisher will be presenting and giving you a little bit of a background on how the Impact Measures Tool project started. So Dr. Fisher is the director of the Center for Translational Neuroscience at the University of Oregon, and he's also a professor of psychology here as well. So please welcome Dr. Fisher, who will be giving about a 10-minute overview on the Impact Project.
Well, thank you, Tyson, and to the rest of the team. It's really a pleasure to be here with you. Tyson, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear? I just want to make sure I'm broadcasting. Great, terrific. As Tyson mentioned, I'm the director of the Center for Translational Neuroscience here at the U of O, where the impact work is based. And this is really an exciting day for the team. My goal is to do a very brief introduction and then step out of the way as quickly as possible, because really, I'm sure that what you're here to see is the impact tool and to get a sense of how it's used, but also because the people who are responsible for bringing this to you today are Tyson, who's overseen the team, and then really the rest of the team. And this has been an amazing team effort over the course of time to bring this to the place that it is. I've been involved in lots of development efforts over the years for new tools for the field, some of which are technology-based, some of which are more on the programmatic side. Personally, I haven't ever seen something that's so robust get up to speed in the kind of time that it's taken to get us to this place. And so I just want to start by acknowledging the incredible work of the team and Tyson's leadership in making it happen. I also want to, there's sort of an origin story of this project, which dates back to work that we were doing a while ago when we were involved in some efforts to promote innovation in the field of early childhood. And there was a period of time when there was a lot of funding available to help seed new projects, kind of like Let 100 Flowers Bloom idea. Where a number of funders had come together and said, let's try to make this happen. And a bunch of people had stepped up. Some were researchers, some were from community-based organizations. There was just a really interesting mix of people and lots of people working together to hatch new ideas. But after about a year, the funders of that work began to get a little edgy, because it was kind of like, okay, well, if this is really supposed to transform the field, how will we know when that's happened? And actually, at that point, I was involved in a lot of that work more because I was one of the innovative program developers. I got asked to sort of be involved in answering that question of how you would know that programs were making a difference. And in spite of having been involved in program development and evaluation for many years, I think we've sort of all taken it as a given that it's just like you do your best and you use the best kind of methods for evaluation that you can, and things sort of come together at some point. And when I was tasked specifically with being responsible for determining how innovative programs were making a difference, it kind of hit me in a way that hadn't before. That at the core, at the crux, and really where all conversations ended up was around how you identify what you should be measuring and select measures. And so, there were a lot of discussions happening at that time. This was a couple of years ago, and a lot of meetings that were being convened around measurement in early childhood. I think a lot of people had arrived at this issue of like measurement at the crux of the problem, and we're trying to determine how to approach things. And there was a moment where Tyson went to a meeting that Janet Fletcher from Pritzker Children's Initiative was at, and they were seated together and started to have a bit of a side conversation about the adequacy of existing measures. And I think, at least the mythology behind this is that Tyson didn't know exactly who Janet was. And so they were just having a nice little conversation, Tyson not realizing that she was a very well-known and important figure in the early childhood funding world. But basically shared with her kind of our ongoing developing thinking that that the search for a single measure that could answer everybody's prayers was a nice idea, but in some ways a pipe dream. And that we had started to think in Oregon about other ideas about how to make the multitude of information and really strong efforts that have existed historically in trying to measure outcomes in early childhood more systematized, more organized, and more accessible to more people. And that was sort of like where a lot of all of these things that had been circulating came together into the idea that we started to work on, which was how do we create a more accessible repository where people can actually find what they're looking for with a kind of accessibility that wasn't like what a Google search will return you, which is like 40,000 or 40 million hits, but where you could really identify what was important to you and then get it. Kind of like, and we use this sort of lightly, but kind of like if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's to pick out some paint for your home, you know, if you're just an average consumer and you're doing a home improvement project, that's pretty overwhelming. How do you know what to pick? It's not just the color, even though that can be kind of mystifying, but it's all the other dimensions of what paint can do. Is it inside? Is it outside? Is it oil-based? Is it acrylic? Can you scrub it? Is it flat? Is it shiny? All of those things. And without any clarity, you don't really know what you're looking for. You just know that you come for blue paint. And so really the analogy here is that, you know, we're hoping to make the trip to the equivalent of Lowe's or Home Depot for people that want to know about measures, a much more curated and positive user experience so that you can get what you need when you need it. And also so that, again, in the best case scenario, like you leave knowing that you actually wanted a satin finish, that you wanted it to be oil-based because it was going to be an outside paint, et cetera, et cetera. That we hope that you will leave your place of interaction with impact in the same way where you know more about measurement and about the measures that are available and how to select them, and not just that somebody has handed you a can of paint and said, okay, you're good, this will work for you. So that's what you're going to be hearing about. And the only other things that I wanted to emphasize that you'll continue to hear is this is like version 1.0. We're very excited about where this is going to head. And we want this to be a user-informed sort of process of moving forward over time. And so please, please, as you begin to become acquainted with impact, as you begin to use it, let us know, give us feedback. How's it working for you? What's working well? What isn't working well? What are additional features that you wish impact had? What are additional measures that you wish you could access? How might impact be used in ways that we haven't envisioned yet? This is as a field building tool and as part of our mission at the Center for Translational Neuroscience. We see these kinds of topics as not things that have to be based in academia and then put out into the world, but rather that it's, as always, a cultural exchange, and that we're ready to learn as much as we hope will provide learning opportunities for others. So with no further ado, I'm going to pass the baton. I just want to say thank you to everybody who's joined for joining yet another webinar on Zoom, because we know everybody has had plenty of those. And we hope this will be useful and informative for you. And we hope you'll stay in touch with us as you learn more about the product and start to use it. So back to you, Tyson, for moving things forward.
Great, thanks, Phil. So just noting that we've had a few folks join since we've started. So for those of you who've joined, feel free to put in the chat who you are, where you're from. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, we also have live transcriptions if you want, closed captioning. And for all of you, but prior to getting to our question and answer, I want you to begin thinking of what are some questions that are arising from what Phil has just talked about, and what are some questions once we kind of move into the web demo that you have, and and then some questions when I talk about the scoring, and following that we'll be doing our question and answer. So feel free to start doing that. And then last, for those who've just joined, we also have a link in the Zoom to complete the survey for the breakout room as well. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Katie Hammond, who has led the efforts into developing this website in the past year and a half, and who's done such an amazing job. I really cannot be more grateful for taking an idea, making it into a living and breathing website that's very centered on the user and very user-centered, friendly to use. So without further ado, Katie, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks so much, Tyson. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining. We're really excited to kind of finally get to release the website to the world and get to show it to you all. It's been a really fun process to get to where we are, and again, very excited to share it with you all today. I'm going to share my screen. We'll just kind of dive right in. I'll give you a little tour through the main pieces of the website, the main components, but keep in mind we'll be diving into kind of everything you see a little bit later on in the presentation as well. So as you have questions, feel free to start adding those into the chat. So before I dive in, just wanted to confirm, can everyone see my screen here? Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, so just as far as an overview of kind of the components of the website, as Phil and Tyson were saying, we are really taking kind of a continuous improvement approach to our website. So not just creating something and setting it aside, but rather creating kind of a living, breathing website that we will be continuing to develop and improve over time as we add new measures and make improvements to what we have. So the three main kind of components of our website, I'll kind of scroll down a little bit. You can see sort of a text summary here, but so kind of the main portion, which is the actual repository itself. So we have the collection of early childhood and parenting measures, and very much integrated and related to that is our scoring system. So our team has created this data-driven scoring approach to categorizing each of the measures, kind of analyzing and determining the unique strengths of each measure to help you determine which may be the best fit for your own needs for searching for measures. So those are kind of the two big components, but we also offer educational resources as well. So we'll talk through that a little bit in more detail later, but one of the components that kind of aligns with our philosophy of the team is offering these educational resources to help folks learn more about measurement itself, to help empower folks who are using the website to be more able to kind of discern between the measures, to help learn more about the concepts kind of underlying these measures in our scoring system. So I'm going to give a little bit of a teaser about the scoring approach before we dive into the measures. And again, Tyson will be discussing this in more detail, but just to give kind of a little brief teaser. So we have created this kind of visual display of our scores in a scoring diamond. So we have 4 scoring categories. We have cost, usability, cultural relevance, and technical merit. And as you can see on this diamond, it's kind of a visual display to really quickly and easily get an overall sense of the measure's scores. As you can see from the yellow shading, the different shaded regions on the diamond indicate the score in each of the 4 categories. You also have the ability to select your preferences if you have certain priorities. For example, if cost or usability is the most important to you, you can actually edit and update your preferences to adjust this shape on the diamond. So you'll see this dotted line, and you'll see kind of updating in live time the scores of each measure in comparison to your own preferences. So looking at the scoring page a little bit more in depth, as you can see, there are a variety of components that fall within each of the main categories. There are several subcategories, and then within each there are different components. So if you would like to learn more about our scoring system, you'll hear more about that in a minute, but you can also visit our page where we have additional information about each of those components. And at the very bottom, for the fullest deep dive, you can also download our scoring guidebook for kind of the full display of the different components of our scoring. So with that bit of a background, I'm going to dive into the measures page. So this is, again, kind of the meat of the site here. So if you go to the website, you're interested in searching for a measure or just doing a little bit more investigating, kind of seeing what's out there, you will land on the measure search page. And we have created a couple of different options for search approaches. So if you know kind of a specific keyword or search term, you'll be able to plug that directly into the search bar at the top. Or if you're looking to do a little bit more exploring with different options, we have a variety of filters on the side here. So through the kind of left column, you can see different filters that we have kind of curated based on what we feel are important qualities in a potential measure for filtering purposes. And as you can see on the right side, there are the results of different measure names, as well as the scoring diamond, where you can, again, get that quick visual of approximately what the scores look like, and that will be in comparison to your preferences if you set them. So once you look at the measures themselves, you get more information about the scores and the information of the measure details. But just from right here, you can see just kind of like baseline information, getting that quick glance. So say you're interested in doing a little bit of searching. Maybe executive functioning is important to you. Maybe you're looking for a measure that's free and that you can readily access immediately. So as you can see, as you select the different filters, the results kind of auto filter there for you. And maybe you're interested in setting your preferences. You can also select them through this window. Maybe usability is also important to you. So you can set your preferences. And as you can see, the diamond shape updates so that the usability is one of the main highlights. And you can see how the scores mirror your preferences. So say that you're interested in comparing multiple measures based on what you're seeing here. Let's say the CREDI and the early years toolbox. You can actually compare them directly. So you're able to take these measures and get a direct side-by-side comparison where you can see not only the scores in a little bit more detail, but also you can see a variety of descriptive information that can help you determine which measures may have strengths that are most relevant for your needs. And again, we'll be going a little bit more in depth with these in the breakout presentations as well. But just to give kind of an overall sense, we have a variety of information that we have gathered for each measure. If you're interested in selecting one in particular, let's say you've decided that you'd like to move forward with the early years toolbox, you can select that and see kind of even more information. So the full spread of information here, as well as you also have the option to see related measures that are also in the same measure grouping. We call this a measure family. And we also have this link directly as we're integrated with Promise Venture Studios with their Promise Venture Index, where we can click here and you will be able to view different early childhood programs that may be using this particular measure. So say that you have decided that you want to move forward with this measure, you're able to click the Access Measure button, and you're directly taken to the site where you're able to either purchase or download the measure. So we try to make this kind of an easy one-stop shop where you're able to get through the full process of selecting, comparing, and kind of determining which measures may be the best fit for you and being able to access them directly. So just really briefly before I hand it back to Tyson, wanted to also come back to our educational resources. I mentioned this at the beginning. We do have a whole page that we have dedicated to both videos and written content that are sort of shaped to help answer questions that you may have about measurement and to help you learn more. So just know that this page is here. This will be one of the focuses of the breakout presentations. And if you're interested in learning more about us, we have our About Us page where you can learn more about our team, our work, and our services. And if you're interested in signing up for our technical assistance consultations, you can also access those services on this page. So that is kind of a quick, brief overview of the features of the website. Again, we'll be going over a few more of these in the breakout presentations, but I think I will hand it back to Tyson now, who I believe is going to be discussing a little bit more about the scoring specifically.
Great, thank you, Katie. So just a reminder, please put some questions in the chat. So what questions do you have? What kind of came up for you seeing the presentation from Katie? What are you interested that you're seeing in there? What are things that maybe you didn't see that you're wondering more about that we can answer? So please put some questions in the chat and we will be answering them during the Q&A after I talk a little bit more about the scoring system. So before I get into the measure scores themselves and how we are scoring the measures, I wanted to do just a little higher level on how we came about kind of defining what is a good measure. So when we started this process, that was the question, what is a good measure? And we had intuition based on our work within a university, based on working with community-based nonprofits, but it really required us to think a little bit more deeply, intentionally about what the qualities of a good measure are. So we did two things. One, we asked the early childhood community, what is a good measure? What makes a good measure for you? And we completed a survey and got information, and we asked educators, program evaluators, pediatricians, administrators, philanthropy on what a good measure is. We also read likely too many academic articles on educational measurement, healthcare measurement, pragmatic measurement, measure psychometrics, to see what the various fields say what makes a good measure. And what we did is we combined the information on what we were hearing from the community and matched that with the academic literature to come up with 4 areas of measurement. And so feel free to go on to the next slide. And those 4 areas are cost, usability, technical merit, and cultural relevance. And I will define those in a little bit more detail in a minute. But before I do, I just wanted to continue and add a little bit on to what Katie was saying about our scoring diamond. And the idea with the scoring diamond is if we have 4 areas that we consider are what makes a good measure, and as Katie mentioned, our goal is to help the early childhood community find good measures based on these criteria that are high quality, but that also fit for the community that you work with and the context in which you work. And the goal is to find measures that fit that criteria. And as you can see in the left image, the gold yellow color represents the scoring diamond. And could you go back one slide? And then the purple dotted line represents kind of what you're looking for. So in terms of measure scores, all measures are scored 0 to 10, with 0 being a lower score and 10 being a higher score. And the closer the outside of the diamond that the measure scores represents a higher score. So the goal is to find a measure that isn't necessarily perfect and has scores in all a score of 10 in all areas, but rather a measure that has all the characteristics and a high enough score for your needs. So I'll go through and define in a little more detail each of the 4 scoring areas. So first is cost. How affordable is a measure? What we've done is we score measures based on, is it free? Is it free and accessible? Can you literally download that measure from our website and start using it for free at no cost the next day? Or is there a subscription fee? Do you have to buy a subscription? Is it fee for per use of the measure? These are the sorts of things that go into the cost criteria. And just to clarify, 0 means higher cost, less accessible, and a 10 means lower cost or free and very accessible. The next area is usability. So how easy the measure is to use. What makes a usable measure is two main considerations. One is the administrator, who's administering the measure. So does it take time to set up to administer the measure? How long does the measure take to administer? Does it take time to then score the measure? Do you have to go to a separate computer, type in the score so it comes up with a percentile or a t-score, for example? But also in terms of what we think of a usable measure is it usable for the individual, the parent or the child who's completing the measure? So is the child able to use this tablet in 5 minutes and complete a measure of executive function? Does the parent have to read 100 questions that have a lot of long words that takes a long time to fill out? So we think of that as part of the usability as well. The last aspect when we think of usability is, does the measure give you something that's actionable? And when we say actionable, are you provided something after measure administration that tells you to do something? And what that means is it a risk category? Does it tell you this child may have autism? Does this say that maybe you should do a longer evaluation? Does it tell you how the parent is doing compared to other parents who have children their same age? So we think of this as in terms of percentiles. So you're able to compare and make actionable decisions with that information. That makes a measure more usable. The next category is technical merit. So technical merit is the area that we see the most importance in terms of the academic literature. And what we call technical merit encompasses two main areas. So how consistent a measure is, which is reliability, how reliable a measure is, and how accurate. So how valid, is the measure valid in predicting what it says it should predict or doing what it says it should do? So I'll go in a little more detail. When we say consistency or reliability, is the measurement stable? So if you were to administer the same measure multiple times, would you get a similar score for a measure of executive functioning for a child? So if it's more stable of each measurement, it gives the indication that the measure is doing a good job in saying what it's supposed to. The second part is when we talk about accuracy or validity, does the measure do and say what it's supposed to measure? So this gets a little confusing, but at a high level, think of a measure of executive functioning on a tablet or a measure of social-emotional development. Does it predict kindergarten readiness? Does it predict how well a child will do in the classroom? Those are the things that make a measure valid and make a measure accurate, and it's doing what it says it's supposed to do. In the absence of a measure predicting something that's important to us or related to another area another domain or another area that's closely related, it tells us the measure might not be accurate. The last part of accuracy is it also unique, and the accuracy is unique to that measure and not to different measures in different areas of development. So a measure of social emotional development would be related to other measures of social emotional development, but shouldn't be related to a measure of motor development. So again, that makes a measure accurate and valid. The last area is cultural relevance. How does the measure serve different groups? When we think of cultural relevance, we think of it as what is the technical merit score for different linguistic groups and different cultural groups? So for example, if you have a measure in Spanish for Spanish speakers and English speakers, is the measure reliable? Is it consistent and as accurate for Spanish speakers as it is for English speakers? Is the measure as accurate and as consistent for families of color as it is for white families? that is one of the main aspects of cultural relevance. The second part is, do individual items or do individual questions, are they interpreted the same way for these different groups? So for a bilingual speaker, do they interpret the words the same in a question? Do they answer it in a similar way as to monolingual speakers? And we are able to look at that information when measures are developed and tested. There should be information that tells us this information to let us know if a measure is working for various communities. So where do we go from here? So we see this, as Phil mentioned and as Katie mentioned, that this is a tool for improvement. So measures are scored, but that does not mean that new measures that are similar can be developed and newer and higher scores can be obtained. So this allows us to begin seeing, where do we see weaknesses in terms of the score, in terms of measures in the field. And at a high level, one area that we do see it is cultural relevance. We see that measures just don't tend to score very well in that area. We see measures aren't that usable. There's a lot of measures that have great technical merit, but not as many that are usable and not as many that we know work for very diverse communities. The other part is, we not only can measures improve, but we can improve our scoring system. So again, we asked the community at the onset of this project, what is important to you and what makes a good measure? So this is our first attempt at saying, well, this is what we heard and this is what the academic literature says. But we don't have all the answers, and we'll only learn and be able to improve our scoring system if we're able to know from you, are these things important? If we give a 10 on a measure of usability and you don't think it's very usable, you should let us know. If we have a measure that has a high score in cultural relevance and you don't think it works for your community you work with, let us know. We're always interested in improving the scoring process and are always interested in improving the ways that measures are used to collect information, to make actionable decisions, and ultimately to improve programming policies for infants and young children and their families. So we'll go ahead now. We'll move on to the question and answer. One concluding thought, I'll just say, in the breakout rooms, we'll dive more into the details of the scoring system. So if any of the questions pertain to kind of, how exactly did you score usability, please attend the usability breakout, for example. So I'll turn it over to Arati, who on our team, who's been screening questions, and we'll go ahead and move into the question and answer period. So please continue to ask questions in the chat.
Thank you, Tyson. And as Tyson mentioned, we will be going over more detailed questions that have been asked in the chat during the breakout sessions. And we'll be going over more general questions that were asked in the chat. So the first question that maybe Katie could answer is the child's age one of the searchable criteria for developmentally appropriate measures can be selected?
Yes, thank you, Arati. So the answer to this question is yes. So age is one of the filters on the search page. So you can quickly and easily kind of scroll through the different options of various child ages. And we also have the option for adult measures as well, for parenting specifically.
Thank you, Katie. And I think a related question in terms of what's available on the website are these descriptions of the different scoring categories that Tyson just went over, also available on the website.
Yes, so on the scoring page specifically, we have kind of increasing level of detail of each of these categories, which corresponds with kind of what Tyson was saying earlier about the background and kind of the pieces of information that are included for each of the categories, and then the subcategories within those.
Okay, thank you, Katie. I have one more question. So Jolene Torres would like to know if Impact Measures tool is similar to a catalog of surveys, assessments on various topics. And Tyson, maybe you could take a stab at this question.
Yeah, could you say it one more time?
Yes. So is the Impact Measures tools a catalog of surveys or assessments on various different topics?
Great question. It's both. So when we started the project, our main goal was to focus on measures that could be used to better understand the impact of early childhood programs and policies. So when we started, we were interested in a few main areas. So one being social emotional development, and relatedly kindergarten readiness and measures for slightly older children. But what we quickly, as we dove in, we realized a lot of programs and policies are supporting parents of young children. And because of that, it's important to understand how parents are doing due to these policies and programs. So we wanted to also include a lot of measures related to caregiver and parent well-being, caregiver and parent stress. To really understand how programs and policies are changing skills, behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs. So getting kind of going to your main question in terms of, are they surveys or what sorts of measures you're scoring? We on the website have the various kind of types that we think through. One of which is a survey. So that's kind of the tried and true. It used to be a piece of paper that you filled out. A parent would fill out about themselves or about their child, and we're seeing some tablet versions now. Both of those are scored. We also have, related to that, when we think of surveys, is screening tools. So a survey-based screening tool, which has a very specific purpose to identifying risk, for example. We've included a number of screening tools as well. And their scoring system is slightly different to account for their ability to accurately detect those who are at risk and those who are not. We've also scored measures that are clinician administered, for example. So there's a number of measures. They tend to be longer that we see, for example, speech language pathologists administered to understand language development. And lastly, there's a group of measures that are predominantly in the research world, which are called observational measures or observational tools, in which typically a videotape is taken. So family interaction is recorded in some way and then coded later by video. There's also some tools that are in the process of being developed to live score an interaction or live score how a child is doing in various areas or how a parent is doing in various areas as well. So we see all of those categories, and what you'll notice quickly on the website is their scores are different, very different in usability, in technical merit, cultural relevance, based on kind of what the tool actually is.
I just want to add really quickly that the first half of that question that I heard was sort of more about what's the structure? Is this a catalog? And the only reason I wanted to chime in here is because we have experience with other listings of measures that have been done that are quite exhaustive. But one of the things that's challenging is kind of information overload that comes with searching for particular measures. So we see this not as a catalog where you would just be sort of leaping through, but really as a tool where the abundance of information that's out there can be synopsized based on what your priorities are, what you're looking for, and therefore it'll greatly expedite the decision process around what's the most appropriate measure that you might choose based on the criteria and the dimensions along which you're considering things.
Thank you so much, Phil and Tyson. And a lot of this information that they have said right now is available on the website in terms of the different topics that are covered in the impact measure tool, as well as the different kind of measures available on the website. We will move on to the next question. Ask the Elizabeth team. Did you collect any information on who or where each measure is used? For example, with states, localities, or communities?
Yeah, great question. I can answer that. Yes, we are. So when a measure is developed, ideally they would report the demographics of the community in which they used to validate that measure. That information ideally should be census aligned. Not always, but it should be. And it should also say something about geography. So we use that information, and the closer that is to national representation, the higher that score is. But kind of getting at that question is that tells you the closer that sample, the validation sample represents the national population, the more likely it generally represents and works for the national population. It still doesn't tell us, and that's the other part of the scoring system of whether it works for various communities. And the other part of our scoring system dives into that if they do analyses with various groups.
Thank you, Thank you, Tyson. We also have around 3 minutes left, so maybe one last question that just popped up from Danny Levine saying, how do you determine what measures to include or exclude?
That's a great question. So in the first round of this first 100 measures, what we chose to include were those domains that I mentioned a few minutes ago. In the process of searching for measures, we spent a few months and quickly found 800 plus measures. And that's when we stopped counting and realized that we needed to start making sure we could score. So our first step was to develop a scoring system that could score measures across those areas of social emotional development, kindergarten readiness, parent health and well-being, parent-child interaction, childcare and childcare quality, so home-based, center-based childcare quality. So we wanted to make sure our systems could score all those, and we wanted to make sure our scoring system would work for screening tools, regular surveys as well, and as well for observational tools. So our first 100 represents not, it partly represents a kind of a plethora demonstrating that we're able to score measures in all these various areas. With that being said, our focal areas are early child development. And so we'll definitely see more in that area. And we hope to continue adding measures as we continue to grow and to kind of eventually get to that 800 in those areas. So what you'll notice is kind of a wide variety of measures in this first area. The last part is we did go by popularity a good bit. So in part of when we asked kind of what measures were out there, who's using what, we used our intuition, we asked around, we also did some surveying. So the idea was to also choose measures that we knew were popular and to avoid the idiosyncratic measures for now, although we do want to include all of them, but we really focused also on measures that are pretty popular to make the website immediately useful.
Thank you so much to Tyson, Phil, and Katie. We are at the end of our Q&A session, but I see that a lot of you are still sending in questions. We will save these questions and we will try to get around to answer them to you maybe in a later session or via email as well. So if you do have more questions, please continue to send them through the chat.
Great, well, thank you, RT. So what we'll be doing is taking a 5-minute break. Again, follow us on social media. In the 5-minute break, you have the opportunity to do that, or you can take a break and we'll see you all back at 10:55, in which we will then start our breakout rooms. And those, yeah, go ahead to the next slide. And just a quick thing I wanted to say, just due to trying to balance making sure everyone is in certain rooms, you may not get your first choice, but ideally most people will. Just to let you know, all the rooms will be awesome and the presentations will be awesome. And the 5 are advanced search features, scoring usability costs, scoring cultural relevance, technical merit, technical assistance, and educational resources. So what we're going to do is do the first part. You're going to go into your first room, then we're going to come back and just do some reflection and a quick break, and then we'll go into the second room. So you will be heading to your first room shortly. All right, welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your first breakout room. So we have just a few minutes here. So I'm curious if please put some of your takeaways so far, either from the breakout room or earlier into the chat, and I'll share them out. And just so we can have a quick discussion, and then we're going to take a break in a few minutes. One other thing to note, if you didn't get your room you were hoping for, do not worry, all presentations in the breakout rooms are recorded. So you will have access to those of all the breakout rooms. after the webinar today. So I pulled a few notes just from some earlier questions and comments just to talk through. So one I wanted to call out was from Shelley Metzenbaum talking about an earlier, some efforts at the National Head Start Association about designing simpler and better measures. And we've actually used that. That was a document that we found, an initiative that's been really inspirational to us. And if you look at, and I'll put back that link that Shelley sent, you'll notice a lot of similarities in kind of what we're thinking of in terms of what makes a good measure. So feel free, I'll give you just a minute here. Feel free to put some kind of just thoughts in the chat and we'll go from there. An earlier comment from Douglas Johnson, I'll call out, says there's great potential to connect with us on the ground of working with populations from different language and cultures to work on developing measures. And just want to say that's a resounding yes. I think what we're, one of kind of the main ideas that we think through in terms of the measures tool is, and I always say this to our staff, is when you assign a score to something, it becomes important. So from a measurement perspective, when you assign a number and it now becomes something important. We see that in education in particular, and we are doing that to the measures now. So we're assigning value and assigning a number to cultural relevance. So we're giving it value, and it gives a kind of a North Star to measure developers, as well as educators and program developers to think about in terms of, oh, forgot to change the name, Deborah Young, that was who said that comment. So that is what, just a kind of a high level thought. Rebecca Gartner, excited for some future language expansions. I work with refugee community in Colorado, and we have a wide variety of languages at our center. Great question. So in our first kind of 100 measures, we tried to not do too many different language versions because we wanted to get a variety. But the one thing we've learned in this process is there are so many different language versions of measures, but there's so little information about how they adapted the measure for a different language. And there's another part to think through. Just because it's in a different language, that doesn't make it appropriate for the culture that comes with that language. Culture and language are often different. So if you cannot just do direct translations, you actually have to understand the community's usage of words. And that actually extends to the measurement psychometrics, how well a reliable and valid a measure is. In our second scoring of measures, we hope to score a lot more language versions. We hope to include a lot more language versions so we're able to support those who use measures and work in various and very diverse communities, and to help them find high quality measures that work for their community. Thank you for all those extra questions and comments and thoughts. We'll save them, but we're going to move into, and I'll respond to some of them in the chat, but we're going to go into our second 5-minute break and then follow into our next breakout room. So we'll see you all back in about 5 minutes. Well, welcome back, everyone, and thanks for hanging in there. We're heading to just the last few parts of our presentation today. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Phil Fisher, who is going to give you some more information about EC Prism, as well as more information on our technical assistance and consulting.
Thanks, Tyson. Again, thank you everybody who's participated for taking time out of what we know are busy schedules in a busy time to hear from us. And yes, one of the things that I wanted to do in kind of beginning to draw things for today to a close is reiterate what I stated at the outset, which is that in as much as this really is designed to be a resource that's a tool for the field, we want to continue to hear from you about what you think is helpful about it, what additional features, additional directions we should head in, and other things that you might be discovering about either needs or uses that will help you to accomplish your work in terms of measurement, evaluation, and understanding of impact. One of the things that was raised in the comments in the chat that I really want to echo and reinforce is that we designed PRISM and Impact not to provide a snapshot of the field that then immediately begins to grow obsolete as time passes, but rather as really an evolving kind of picture of where things stand at any given moment. And so our aspirations are to continue to update the impact repository in particular as new information becomes available. And related to that, it is our genuine and sincere hope that by doing so, we will help to be one part of the ecosystem that helps to identify the existing gaps in early childhood measurement and evaluation, and stimulates others, including potentially many of you on this call, to be adding new measures to the field and to be pushing the field to update and improve existing measures. One of our really exciting visions is that for people who work in community-based settings, practitioners, program directors, policymakers, we hope that if there are gaps that you feel like need to be filled, that you won't simply say, well, when is some professor at a university going to do that? But that you'll start to feel more empowered to do that yourselves. And one of our hopes for impact is that if new and innovative measures are developed and people are interested in doing the kind of work that helps to improve the quality of measures, that kind of use can be crowdsourced on impact. That is to say, new measures that really are designed specifically to assess and understand real life kinds of issues, that those measures can be posted and people who are interested in using them in their preliminary form and contributing to the quality of data for those who are developing them in real world settings will benefit from that. So we really are hoping that this will help to kind of take some of the siloing that's always been an issue in our field and to really, like, rather than just put up pictures of breaking down silos and collective impact kind of ideas, that this will really fundamentally achieve some of that collective impact because we're all gathering in the same space on equal footing with various pieces of information and knowledge to contribute. So that's sort of our goal for the future for impact. The other thing that I just wanted to allude to here, and you'll see that the EC Prism logo and name is up on our slide right now, is that we've known from the very start, and this dates back to the innovation evaluation consultation stuff that started this, that I mentioned at the beginning, that the starting place for some people, for sure, is just like, I need a measure of X, of child receptive language, and I just need to know one that's the best fit for my situation. That's great. But hand in hand with just knowing what the best measure is a process of understanding what it is that your program or your policies are seeking to change and how to go about changing those things. And so we have a very robust model that is designed to provide consultation and technical assistance in exactly those issues. That is how you go about sort of transforming some of the implicit ideas about what you're trying to accomplish into a much more precise and explicit theory of change and theory of impact. And I want to note that theories of change are often required by funders in order to sort of demonstrate that you have an idea of where you're headed. But many of you who've completed those kinds of exercises find that what you end up producing is of sort of limited long-term value in guiding your measurement and evaluation strategy. So the assistance and consultation that we provide is designed to really go beyond sort of some of those generalities and get down to real brass tacks and create usable and living theories of impact that can evolve as your measurement and evaluation evolves. And I'll just say in closing about this that our goal with all of this work is to really begin to broaden, not change, but broaden the thinking about what constitutes evidence in the field of early childhood. We feel like there has been far too much constraining of what we mean by evidence to sort of a bimodal kind of way of thinking, or very black and white thinking, that the goal of impact evaluation is to say, does it work or doesn't it work? And that in the absence of it works, that there's no future for getting resources to support programs. And yet, in so many other areas, so many other sectors of society, the focus isn't on those kind of black and white conceptualizations of gathering information. It's about continuous improvement. And so for us, at the end of the day, impact evaluation is a tool for continuous improvement. And there is no finish line to that kind of work. That is, we don't believe that programs should ever be at a point where they say, okay, we have 100% success rate, works for everybody under all circumstances, and we're ready to walk away. There's always room for improvement, and measurement and using of measures and understanding how to proceed with really precise kinds of impact evaluations is simply a tool to get to continued improvement. Our goal in saying this is not to upend the status quo about scientific rigor, because we come from a science background and we know what the sort of strengths and limitations of the various measurement and evaluation strategies are, but really just to democratize and broaden the discourse about what we mean by evidence in ways that are more organic and really fit real world settings more adequately. And so we hope that this is information that will not just resonate for people who are delivering programs, practitioners, people receiving programs, families, and not just people who oversee and direct programs, but also for policymakers in terms of their willingness to fund programs that are actively engaged and can show that they're measuring and continuing to improve impact, rather than that they're just taking something off the shelf and putting in place and saying, we can do this because it's been proven to work, whether or not it actually pans out in the context in which it's being implemented. So we hope beyond anything that the idea will be that policymakers and then also philanthropic funders will begin to sort of join us in this idea that evidence should be dynamic, should be evolving, and should be a process and not a product. And that engaging in the process of gathering evidence for the purpose of improving the reach of programs, understanding what it would take to get individuals and families who typically don't respond to benefit more, and to continue to improve the impact even for those for whom programs work okay, should be really the goal that we're set on. All of the tools that have historically and traditionally existed in the field, like randomized clinical trials, are amazing tools for these kinds of things, but only to the extent that they're conceived of as, at the end of the day, getting to a place where things can continue to improve, as opposed to these all or none kind of propositions around the research enterprise. So that I'm sort of putting a flag in the ground, like that's where we want to be. That's what impact was designed for. That's what the EC Prism model for providing support and consultation is all about. And it's not to reject the status quo, but it's to broaden and extend and create many adjacencies to the status quo, so that everybody can play in this space and everybody can feel a sense of efficacy and belonging and empowerment in this space. So if you come away from today with some sense, some inkling that that might be something that would be useful for you and for your organization, that's great. And if we somehow have resonated in a way that makes you question that idea that we're trying to improve and extend and not upend, please reach out to us and let us know. Reach out to me personally, to Tyson, or to other members on our team. But this is really where we hope to go with this. And we hope that all of you will join us on this journey. So that's my concluding remark. Again, I want to thank all of our team members. I know we have some other acknowledgements and thank yous to make, but I'll leave that to the other team members to do. So thanks all of you for joining, and on to the remaining part of the webinar.
Great, thank you, Phil. And I'll turn it over to Katie to close us out for today.
Thank you, Phil and Tyson. So we are at the close of today's event. We're so glad that we got to share the Impact Tool with all of you. Thank you for joining. So just a couple quick things before we close out today. So first, we will be sending a poll to all of you through Zoom to just really quickly let us know how we're doing, how likely you are to potentially use the Impact Tool. So we will send this poll, and then if you can just kind of quickly complete it as you have time. So it looks like the poll has been added. So just in the next couple minutes, just completing the poll and letting us know, giving us some feedback. We really appreciate it. Another thing that I wanted to announce is that we're doing a little bit of a giveaway. So we have selected 5 random winners to win a EC Prism tote bag. So very exciting. You get some EC Prism merch. So I will add the winners in the chat here. And if you are one of the winners, we will be reaching out to you via email to send you your tote. So the winners are Sheridan Green, Stephanie Clothier, Karen Tylek, Grant Richardson, and Sophie Savalcools. So thank you so much. You are our giveaway winners for the EC Prism tote bags. So again, we'll be in contact with you. I also wanted to mention that we are doing a giveaway for a technical assistance service package. If you're interested in this giveaway, we have a post-event survey that we will be adding the link into the chat. So we encourage everyone to complete our post-event survey, but especially if you're interested in this TA service giveaway, you can let us know in the survey and give us more information about your organization and kind of what your goals are. So that will be popping into the chat here in a moment. So after the event is completed, feel free to complete our post-event survey. And this, again, will just let us know how we did with our event today and give us a little bit more information that can help us in the future. So the last thing I wanted to cover before we conclude is releasing our link to all of you. So this is the official Impact website link here. If you are interested in accessing it or sending it to folks in your networks, we have it in the chat here that you can just directly copy and paste and use at a later time. So feel free to access our link here and also email us at ecprism@uoregon if you have any questions for us in the future. So finally, I wanted to give a great big thank you to all of our Impact sponsors who have helped us get to the place that we are right now, having this wonderful tool and being able to share it with all of you. So thank you very much to our funders and also to our partner Promise Ventures. As you may have seen, the website link integration with early childhood programs is through their organization. So we want to thank them for partnering with us as well. And finally, last but not least, I want to give a thank you to all of the members of the Impact team, both past and present, who have helped work tirelessly on this website, on this wonderful tool. Thank you to all the staff and volunteers, to everyone who helped out with the logistics of this event, and everyone on the wider EC Prism team for their hard work and dedication as well. So just wanted to thank everyone And lastly, thank you all for attending today. We really appreciate you joining and sharing this event with us. And we're really hoping that Impact can be a useful tool for all of you in the future. So thank you again very much. We really appreciate you joining, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you all. Bye.